Should you have a living will and a healthcare proxy? Tune in now to hear what attorney Joseph Marra has to say about this topic.
Erica, one thing people don't really consider when they come in and say, I really want a will, and they're worried about them dying. What people don't realize is that as the population gets older, we have more of a chance of being disabled before we die than there ever was before. So, especially if you're younger and with children, you don't think about these things. But there's more of a possibility that you can be disabled, and you really have to plan for that disability. And in New York State, the operative document is a healthcare proxy. So when you have a healthcare proxy, once you can no longer make healthcare decisions for yourself, that person will step in for you. And many people will say, well, it would normally be my wife. Well, it normally would be. What if your wife's disabled? What if things go on and God forbid your wife predeceases you, your husband predeceases you, you get divorced? Then who's going to make the decisions for you? So you really need to have the operative document where, okay, if I can't make decisions for me, someone else is going to do it for me. And the operative document in New York is called the Healthcare Proxy. There are other documents as well we're going to talk about briefly. A living will. There's something called a mulced, a pulsed. Those are not, the mulced and the pulsed are not really used that frequently, but they are on the books, something you should know about. But for your healthcare proxy. And what dovetails with that is the living will. Now, the term is kind of amorphous because you think a will is to when you die. That this is for when you're alive, right? And a living will is basically a statement by you that says, look, if I am brain dead, pull the plug. Just give me pain medication. I don't want to be brain dead and linger on forever. Now, other people have different views. They say, well, if I am brain dead, keep me alive as long as possible. You could put that in your healthcare proxy and in your living will. Now, some people just leave in their healthcare proxy, well, my agent knows what I want. I don't think that's a good idea. I think you need to put these statements as to what you want in your healthcare proxy and in a living will, because the living will is your declaration as to what you want to have happen. And the healthcare proxy, it empowers the person to act for you if you can. So both very, very important documents where you can say, hey, if there's no more brain function, give me medicine to make me comfortable, withhold food and water, and let me pass, rather than being around indefinitely. For those of you who are a little older, you might remember years ago there was a case in New Jersey, Karen Ann Quinlan. She was a young woman who basically became brain dead, and her family fought in court to have her taken off life support systems. And it was front page papers in the 60s and 70s. And unfortunately, this woman lasted a very long time. And when the family finally won, they still wouldn't pull the feeding tube out of her in the water. So she basically lingered as a vegetable for years. I know personally, I wouldn't want that to happen to me or to a loved one. And you really need to make that statement and declaration and have it done. And once it's done, you shouldn't take it, stick it in the drawer. You should bring it to your primary care doctor, bring it to any doctor that you know you're going to see. And more importantly, if you're going into the hospital and you know you're going to the hospital, bring it with you. So you're having elective surgery, here's my healthcare proxy. They have it. The hospital people do appreciate that. Sometimes in New York, they give you a standard New York form, say, fill this out. You don't know what you're filling out. You're under stress. You may not put in everything you want into that document. Have one done, drafted properly by an attorney with all the relevant information and all your wishes and desires in the document. Very important. And make sure that your proxy has a copy, and when you go to the hospital, that you bring it with you. One other thing with this, name a backup. Say, well, I named my wife. Well, what if your wife dies before you? I always tell people, name two backups. If A can't do it, then B. If B can't do it, then C. The living will is the declaration by you that says, pull the plug. It basically sets your desires and your wishes as to what to do in the event you are brain dead. That's the living will. That's the living will component of this. So you have I use three main documents: the living will, which is your declaration, your statement; the healthcare proxy, which incorporates your statement in it, but gives someone the power to act for you, to make healthcare decisions for you if you can't; and then the advance directive with respect to funeral arrangements, where you set forth who's going to make those arrangements and what you want done. I mean, some people, I had one client tell me that he wanted a big party. He wanted it the day of a New York Giant game. He had it all laid out what the hell thing was going to do, how his funeral was going to go, and we put that in his advance directives with respect to funeral arrangements. It was all laid out. So you can put that in there too. And then usually when they do that, I also put similar provisions in the will. So there's two documents showing the same desires. And I mentioned briefly the mulched and the pulsed. They have more specific, more detailed things in them. I don't really use them. One thing people get confused about, they say, well, I want a DNR, do not resuscitate order. Well, a DNR is something signed by the doctor in the hospital. What it says is, if this person stops breathing, don't resuscitate them. That's it. Okay. Well, what if you're brain dead and your heart's still beating? DNR is not going to help you. All right? You're going to still be sitting there. So don't confuse a DNR with a healthcare proxy and a living will. Clearly have these things in your own fate, in your own hands. Do them, have them done. It'll be comfort for you. It'll be comfort for your family. And it really is very quick and relatively inexpensive to have this done. That's related to your healthcare.
Thank you so much, Joe, for that important information. And thank you, audience, for watching. If you yourself or someone you know may have questions on this topic, please don't hesitate to pick up the phone and call the law offices of Joseph Marra. They are professional, friendly, and really great at looking at the pros and cons of your situation, coming up with a fantastic strategy, and giving you some options. We look forward to hearing from you soon.